Who's been to the movies recently? Tell me your name again.
Sue.
Sue, what'd you see?
Well, I started to see the 5-year engagement, and then I had to leave because the audience was really bad. But
Because the audience was really bad. I thought the movie was just really bad. All right, so you went to see the 5-year engagement. How long did you last, by the way?
like 20 minutes.
Okay, that's better than
Somebody took a
episode.
flash photograph in it, and it was a mess.
But when you got there, I'm guessing when you sat down in the seat, the minute you sat down, the lights went down, the music came up, and there was Jason Segel, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and all the rest of them, right? Nothing came before it?
No, I'm afraid there were some things.
Lots of commercials, and we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But what else? Coming attractions.
Yeah.
Trailers. Trailers for other movies. What did you see trailers for?
There were tons, but the only one I really remember was Prometheus.
Okay, so a trailer for Prometheus, okay. Now what if, and let's assume that that's not a particular area of interest of yours. Let's say that instead of showing you the preview for Prometheus, instead of showing you the trailer, they decided to show you the entire movie. You had sat down and said, surprise, we know you came here to see 5-year engagement, but here you are, here's Prometheus. Best of luck. Now me, I'm sort of curious, so I might have stayed. But what most normal people have done? They would have left, right? Why?
Because that's not what they came to see, it's not what they're interested in, it's a waste of their time.
If you didn't come to see Prometheus, then why did they show you the trailer for it?
To get me interested to come see it later.
What's that? To take advantage of the limited window of opportunity that you gave them in order to deliver a message that was short and direct and easy to understand? My gosh, she's already got it. So what are we talking about here? What I'm talking about when I talk about a short and direct and easy to understand message, I'm not talking about dumbing down the message. What I'm talking about doing is catching people's attention. And what I'm talking about, by the way, is a message that's not just short and direct and easy to understand, but that's compelling. That's interesting. And even more important than compelling, a message that's relevant to the people I'm talking to. Because my goal, by the way, is not to fit a message through that window of opportunity. That's too small a window to have an intelligent conversation about fixing California's public schools. My goal isn't to fit a message through that window of opportunity. My goal is to expand that window. My goal is to make that window bigger. Because if I try to show them the whole movie from the outset, they're going to walk out. But if I can start out by showing them a trailer, if I can start out by giving them a relatively short and direct and easy to understand message, then maybe they'll see or hear something in that is compelling, that is sufficiently relevant to make them want to come back and see the whole movie. And what's the whole movie? Well, maybe they'll come to my campaign website. Maybe they'll attend a campaign event. Maybe they'll volunteer or they'll donate. Maybe they'll read an article about my candidate or about my cause. And maybe if I do a really, really good job, maybe they'll vote for my candidate. Maybe they'll support my cause. Maybe they will care not as much as I do, but more than they already do. But if I try to show them the whole movie at the outset, I'm never going to do it. So I know I'm belaboring this point because it's a particularly important one, especially for smart people. By doing a short and direct and easy to understand message, we're not dumbing down, we're not condescending, we're not appealing to the lowest common denominator. What we're doing is we're casting a wide net. And we're not going to catch everyone in that net. Some people aren't going to want to see even the whole movie trailer. They're going to leave right away. But I've got a much better chance of getting them to hear my entire message if I start out just by showing them that trailer to begin with. Now, one of the things I learned in watching you guys do your introductions is that most of you, I think by sheer necessity standing up in front of a class, have learned how to do this almost intuitively. But one of the things that we're going to learn over the next 4.5 weeks is how to take messages. And by the way, everything all of you guys had to say was information I was interested in. But the next time you do this, whether I ask you the same question or a similar one, is you're not going to say, I'm going to tell Dan Schnur and everyone else in this class everything they need to know about me. I'm going to pick the few very most important things. And if I tell them something in that short and direct and easy to understand message that is interesting to them or relevant to their lives, then maybe I can tell them the rest of my biography. So once again, it comes back to a concept of prioritizing. I want a message that can fit into that window, not through it, so that I can expand it. I'm never going to be able to tell most of my audience everything I think they ought to know, but want to be able to tell them more than I can in that original trailer. And the only way I can do that is by catching their attention fairly briefly, and then expanding the window, moving forward. Now, we're going to talk a little bit later today, actually probably next week, now that I notice. We're going to talk next week about the issues in the campaign. And what I'll say now, just by way of a disclaimer, is issues, the matters of public policy that a candidate would implement or prevent from being implemented, are by far the most important part of a campaign message. You've probably read somewhere that issues don't matter. It's not true. Issues decide elections. And we can talk more about this going forward, but I'm just laying this out as a premise for us to come back to a little bit later today or next week. Because I say that, I'm just going to assert for you now that issues are the most important part of a message, but before I can get voters to pay attention to my issue positions, before I can get voters to pay attention to my policy priorities, first, I have to tell them about myself. Think about it. Let's say I announce today that I'm running for President of the United States. And I announce to you my various policy priorities. You might agree with me. You might say, Schnur has the right idea of what to do in the Middle East. He knows what to do. He knows how to deal with China and the Pacific Rim. He knows how to create jobs. He knows how to fix education. He knows how to fix healthcare. And well, in fact, I do. But we'll save that for another class. But most of you are still not going to vote for me for president. Why? Because you don't know anything about me. If you don't know anything about it, you're going to be appropriately suspicious about casting a ballot for an office that important without knowing something about it. Ultimately, the issues are going to drive your decision. Ultimately. But first, we need to deal with the most important part of a campaign message, and that's the candidate's biography. The candidate's biography. And well, the reason I say, I guess the best way I would frame this discussion as it relates to issues in the other parts of the message, is a biography. A candidate's biography is a threshold. And if the voters can't get past that threshold, they don't care what I have to say about the issues or about anything else. And I'll talk in a minute or two about the threshold that the biography represents. But what I want to do first is I want to let you know that even though issues are the most important part of the most vote-determinant part of a campaign, a candidate's life experience, his or her biography, is the first foundational step toward building a message. Because like I said, until you get voters across that threshold through that doorway, they're never going to listen to what you have to say on the policy matters that you want to implement. So, there are three types of biography we're going to talk about. And by the way, what you will learn very, very quickly is I have a mystical, near-religious belief in the power of threes. I have learned just through trial and error. There's actually nothing religious about it at all. It's mainly pedagogical. That three is the number of things that the average person can remember when they're not paying a huge amount of attention. I tell my candidates to lay out 3 issue priorities. Whenever you hear me frame something in threes, you know that I think it is particularly important. So therefore, the 3 types of candidate biography are the candidate's personal biography, the candidate's professional biography, and the candidate's political biography. The candidate's personal biography, the candidate's professional biography, and the candidate's political biography. Now, I'm going to take a minute to define each in just a moment. But what I want to do first is I want to give you an example of the importance of biography. And I apologize. The person who's not shy? Helen. Okay, let's say I'm running against Helen for school board. Okay? I'm running against Helen for school board. And let me tell you something about Helen. Helen was born in our community. She was raised here. She attended the public schools in our community. After she graduated from high school and from college, she taught in our local schools for many years. After many years of teaching, as it happened, she invented a piece of social networking software, something she did in her spare time. Yes, because we all know teachers have so much spare time. Oops. And as it happens, Helen, because of this social networking software, became fabulously wealthy, incredibly wealthy, obscenely wealthy. Romney, Whitman kind of wealthy, okay? Really, really wealthy. And she started her own software company. And even though she doesn't teach every day, she never forgot about our schools. She provides internships to the students in our local high schools. And when our students graduate from college, she provides them job opportunities when they return to our community. And not only that, not only did Helen attend and teach in the public schools in our community, but all 16 of her children attend the public schools in our community. So that's Helen, okay? Now I'm running against Helen. I wasn't born here. Where I grew up back in the Midwest, I went to private school. Because nobody goes to public school unless they really have to, you know what I mean? I'm not married. I don't have kids. Not that I know of, I've never actually been inside the public schools in our community. But you know what? I watch Glee. And I've got to imagine that our schools have a lot of the same problems and a lot of the same challenges that the schools in Glee do, the schools in Gossip Girl do, and that school and community does. So if you elect me, I'm going to fire Sue Sylvester. I'm going to make the other necessary changes it takes to make our schools successful. All right, who are you going to vote for school board? Me or for Helen? Helen, are you kidding? Even though I'm voting for Helen. But think about it, except for the Sue Sylvester firing thing, you know nothing about our issue positions. You don't know what we think about teacher compensation and evaluation. You don't know what we think about student testing. You don't know what we think about school choice in charter schools. You don't know anything about our poly positions, but every single person in this room, myself included, is ready to vote for Helen on the strength of her biography. And what we're going to do in just a minute or two is we're going to break down that biography, not yours personally, but we're going to break down that biography into individual parts and talk through why it's such an important threshold. But first, just a couple of quick definitions. Personal biography is, of course, what you've accomplished or experienced in your personal life, your non-professional, your non-political life. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Are you married? Do you have children? How long have you lived in this community? What is it about your personal life that might be relevant or interesting to the voters, either in a positive or in a negative way? And we'll talk more about that as we get further into the class in a couple weeks also. Your professional biography is what you've accomplished in your non-political professional life. And by the way, a professional biography breaks down into two categories. Your professional biography is what jobs have you had? What is your employment experience? But number two, what have you accomplished in those jobs? For good or for bad? Tell me your name in the blue shirt here.
Chris.
Chris. All right, so let's say for the sake of argument that Chris is a small business owner. Okay? Well, that's something that we should know about his professional biography. But we also will find out, as the campaign goes on, that 3 of his businesses have gone bankrupt. Let's say, for example, tell me your name next to Chris. Veronica. Veronica is the principal of a charter school. Okay? That tells us something about her professional biography. And test scores have gone up in her charter school every year since she's been there. It's not just the job they've had, it's what they've accomplished in them. And then similarly, when it comes to a candidate's political biography, number one, we want to know about what positions you've held, but what you've accomplished in them. And when I say positions held, I want to make it clear that unlike Brent or unlike Eric, I know most of the people in here haven't held elective office. Any office, whether it's elected or appointed or volunteer, is part of your political biography.